Last time on Schmitty's Off-Road, we were down at Mid-America Outdoors for round 2 of the Heartland Racing Association. But today, we gotta work on the RZR because there was a little bit of carnage going on. So as you see in the last video, we actually took out a concrete wall with our back tire and we completely smashed the rim and it ended up blowing out the wheel bearing and also broke part of the bearing carrier. And then we also, in the process, blew out that rear boot, and we also blew out the front boot up here. So you can see it's all twisted, mangled up. There's grease all over the place. We've got the left and the right one, as well as new wheel bearings. And then the Super ATV box, we have the new boots. And I think they got us some new C-clips as well. So we'll be pretty much good to go there. We've got all the parts we need. So we're gonna get this thing put all back together. We've got to get the wheels back on it, which obviously we got to fix the axles and that bearing carrier before we do that. But once we get all that done, this is going back to Seek Designs Racing because we've got a new little piece right in here. RPM Power Sports with the hookup. We'll go ahead and unbox this just a little bit and show you guys what we've got cooking. So in here this is actually an intercooler fan for a Can-Am X3, and you might be wondering, why do I have a Can-Am intercooler fan? Well, it's because we've got a Can-Am intercooler, and what we're gonna be doing with that is a air-to-air intercooler setup. So we're gonna take this thing back to Seek Designs Racing. We're gonna do some custom intercooler tubing because this tube is gonna actually have to go. We'll put that intercooler somewhere up in here. We might do a little scoop to also force air in through that intercooler, but we'll be doing some custom stuff back here to get that thing to work. And then we'll be ready to go for our next race. So this video, we're just gonna be doing a little bit of maintenance, and then I'll also show you guys some of the process with that air-to-air setup, show you how we're gonna make it work, the tubing that we're gonna have to do, just kind of talk through the whole process. It's gonna be interesting because that's gonna be my first really modification on the performance side because we are starting to run into high intake temps, and that's why we're doing that air-to-air setup. But this will be my first kind of more performance-oriented upgrade, and hopefully it'll help us sustain power throughout the entire race and not really go into limp mode, which we were about 13 degrees away from limp mode in our last race and 3 degrees on engine temp. So we were really threading the needle. But I do want to give a huge shout out to RPM Power Sports for sending me this intercooler setup. It's gonna be a huge, huge advantage running that on this RZR, and I can't wait to continue running their products and showing support for them. And hopefully, if we can get this set up to work really well, we'll be able to help market that to you guys. So if you want a similar setup and we've got it dialed in, you'll be able to get it from us or through RPM, hopefully, and you'll be able to rock and roll, be ready to go racing. So let's go ahead, start tearing into this thing, and check out some more of the in-depth damage from Mid-America. One thing I want to hit on real quick, I'll show you guys kind of closer up of this bearing carrier and what is all broke. But I do want to kind of talk about one part that I invested money in and have not had good luck at all with, and that is these kryptonite wheel bearings. I know they have a lifetime warranty, but I have never gotten these things to last. And when you if you pull the hub off or anything, for whatever reason, this bearing always comes apart. One of these things always comes off with the hub. And this was a brand new bearing and I had one race on it. So I destroyed the one when I hit the wall. So I replaced it with this kryptonite bearing. And again, like the entire bearing came apart when I pulled the wheel or the hub off. So I'm like this, and again, this has always been the issue with these bearings. Whenever I press them in, whenever I pull them out, whatever it is, they just fall apart. So I am definitely not impressed with those. I'm gonna be replacing them with the Polaris heavy duty wheel bearings. That's what I put in my front bearing carriers when I got the long travel kit. I went ahead and just swapped them out for new fresh bearings. And that's what I'm gonna do with the rear, because that's where I had the kryptonites, and I can't have these bearings failing like this, which again, like I'm not saying me hitting the wall no bearing I don't think would have survived that wall impact, but these don't even survive me pressing them in. So it's annoying to have to get these all lined up. You might lose a ball out of there when that happens. So it's just it seems like something's not right in those bearings. They don't stay together. But this right here, again, you can kind of see the gap from this point over to this point is where it broke. Now the bearing hasn't pressed back out, and it probably would be fine because this outer piece doesn't get as much force as the inside. Just depends on what angle and what corners you're hitting. But I'd probably be okay, but we are gonna go ahead and replace it. And then I'm just gonna keep this as a spare. Obviously it's not like a long-term spare. I wouldn't put this on and run it for an entire season. But if it's like I break one at the track and then I need to get it replaced, I can at least get through a race or two with this one. And the reason I'm going back with a stock replacement bearing carrier is this entire piece from Polaris is like $70. This entire piece, which blew my mind that it was that cheap. And the aftermarket ones are about $600 a piece for the good billet ones. And then you can get some chromoly ones that are like $700 to $800 a piece. And I could get two of these, left and a right, for like $140, which to me, I could get 5 sets of spares and be good to go. So eventually I do want to get the upgraded ones because they have a cap system for the bearing that actually threads in from the outside. So it would make switching out bearings very, very easy, and it is going to be stronger. But it is, I mean, for now, for being my first year racing, I will take a $70 part that has worked very well. I mean, this has held up very well. Probably would have held up all season if I wouldn't have decided to hit a wall. So we're going to go ahead and we're actually going to take that clip out. We'll take this bearing out and get this all cleaned up because we will use this as a spare. But I'll go ahead and get the other bearing pressed in, the new one, and we'll start getting it put back together. Well, we have the Razor back from Seek Designs Racing. Let's go ahead, show you guys what we did while we were over there. Got a couple pretty cool pieces that we added to the Razor, but we still have to get some final things finished up so we're ready to rip here in a couple weeks at Adrenaline Motorplex. But let's go ahead and give you a quick rundown of what we've been up to. So as you may know, the battery is typically under the driver's seat. Well, with this seat mount that we had to make for my PRP seat that actually bolts in, that is welded, and it's a pain to take that seat in and out all the time. So what we did was actually relocated the battery over to this side, so on the passenger side. And the reason is this battery has been giving me fits. I don't know why, but it keeps dying on me. So we've had a battery tender on it constantly, and it's gotten so bad to the point where it can't even last a day. So we did some tests and the battery is shot. So I've got a new one over here. We're gonna be throwing that in there, but we're also going to have a disconnect switch. So now this switch will completely turn the power off. So every time you gotta flip that to on before the car will start. But that'll completely kill power to the battery, which will be nice, so there won't be any current getting pulled. And then this little switch here is for something we've got hiding right back there. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we got back there. So this is going to be our air-to-air intercooler setup. So I want to give a huge shout out to RPM Power Sports. They sent me an intercooler for a Can-Am and their new brushless fan. So this should all be very, very good quality. We shouldn't have any issues in that aspect. And then we also went ahead and got some new charge tubes and silicone boots. We had to custom do this because, again, this RZR does not come with an air-to-air setup, so we had to do a full custom design. And this was all thanks to Seek Designs Racing. He was able to come up with these new brackets, which this thing, we might end up modifying it just a little bit, but he wanted to add that little piece up at the top to kind of help funnel some air down to the intercooler, because it will be kind of hidden back there, so it won't get a ton of air forced into it. So that'll kind of act a little bit of a hood scoop, and if it ends up being an issue, we might modify that to be pulling more air to that intercooler. But with this brushless fan, this should pull enough air through to keep us cool. And then all we have to do now is remove the intercooler block that's tucked away in here. So we're gonna have to also take off those two coolant lines that connect up here. And we'll be basically tying those into each other. So we're not gonna pull them all the way off of the RZR, but we'll tie those into each other so it'll basically bypass that intercooler. And then Seek Designs cut me a new block off plate that will go back in this place. So we'll pull the intercooler block out, that'll get bolted back down, and then there won't be any coolant in that system. It'll just be straight from the turbo into the intercooler, into this pipe, and then straight into the intake. So we'll be getting rid of the air to water intercooler, which again, it's one of the ways people have gotten these things to run cooler. Some people have been able to make the air to water work, but just for the sake of time and ease, we don't really have the access to the Polaris engineers like some of the top Polaris racers do. So we think this is gonna be a good solution, at least for now. And we'll test it, modify it a little bit, and see what we gotta do to make it work. And then another cool piece we did get is this Turbo Smart blow-off valve. So this is pretty adjustable, but the reason we went with this one is it comes with this little port that actually disconnects, so I could pull this band off and that blow-off valve will come off pretty easily. But it's nice because you can weld this port in there and then your blow-off valve will bolt to that. So there's no, if we would run a standard blow-off valve, you'd have to weld a port and then you'd have to have like a silicone boot, and then the blow-off valve would get secured to that silicone boot. So this just kind of cleans it all up. Very, very nice quality blow-off valve. I haven't been able to run it yet to see what it sounds like, so I'm hoping today we can get that intercooler block out of there, get the battery replaced, and then start it up and see how it works. Make sure the fan and everything kicks on properly, and we'll be ready to go. So we'll go ahead, crack into this thing a little bit, show you guys the final product, what I figure out with the coolant lines, and hopefully we'll be rocking and rolling. So that's it for now, let's go. Well, we have put a couple heat cycles through it. We will probably do one more to make sure everything's good to go. But here is the final product. So I already showed you guys the whole air-to-air setup. There is the block-off plate. So obviously we don't have the two ports coming out there anymore. I obviously don't have the coolant lines, and you'll see this one here is the only one that I kept on there. So what we did with this, I'll see if I can show you. So it loops around, and then right below here is your water pump. So what we did is just disconnected because obviously there was an inlet tube and an outlet tube. The outlet ran from the intercooler up front, or the other radiator, back to the intercooler, and then it went into the other tube and then into your water pump. So basically what I did is I just took out one of those tubes, cut the other one, and went from the intercooler into the water pump. So it's just continuously running through that system. It doesn't go all the way to the back of the machine and into that intercooler brick, because the intercooler brick is gone. So eventually we'll completely take that system out, the second radiator up front, intercooler, heat exchanger, whatever you want to call it. Eventually we'll take that out, probably when we do the radiator setup on the passenger side. But that's a ways down the road. For now, we'll keep it there so it kind of acts as a second, because it's the same engine, it's the same coolant that goes in the engine. So having that other fan up there, or that other radiator up there, and then that extra bit of hose, hopefully will help. It just adds more coolant to the system. So maybe it'll help kind of keep it cooler. But again, we'll remove it eventually. But for now, it's not doing us any harm. So we're gonna test this out at the next race. See how it goes. I mean, we lost the coolant when I disconnected the hoses, filled it back up, and we're down about 1/2 inch. So I need to add more to that. But we're gonna do one more heat cycle, make sure everything is good to go, and I'll start it up here and let you guys hear it. There's actually some cool turbo noises that you can hear now. So I don't know if it's because of the air-to-air setup or what, but we might have to do some adjusting on the blow-off valve, which this Turbo Smart, you literally just have to turn this cap to adjust it. Very, very adjustable and super slick piece. So it's got harder and softer. So the harder it is, the harder you have to push the gas for that to open up. And if you put it softer, it'll open up easier, or just under very light throttle. So I think we need to adjust that a little bit, because there was some turbo flutter when I would let off the gas if the blow-off valve wouldn't open. I'll see if I can get it to make that noise here for you guys. See if it'll come up on the camera. So there you have it. That's our little bit of race prep and air-to-air intercooler. So I want to give a big shout out again to RPM Power Sports for hooking me up yet again with some more parts for this thing, because they've been a huge support of this YouTube channel from the get-go. So big shout out to RPM Power Sports, Jason Dickey over there. Very, very good dude. So we'll be really putting that intercooler to the test. If it does work, I will be able to help you get hooked up with this setup if this is something you would like to do. And that'll be in a partnership with Seek Designs Racing. So obviously he helped tremendously with this, getting all the charge tubes figured out, helping me with the battery, the disconnect, that whole system, relocating that battery. So Seek Designs, yet again, helped me out on this build. And looking forward to seeing what the next race brings, because we're gonna be pushing it pretty hard. We're gonna be doing the 2-foot driving, seeing if we can get our cornering down a little bit better, and hopefully run up with the front with some of the better people. So that's it for now. Sorry, it's been a little longer wait on this video. I've been super busy, but hopefully we'll get back to some more consistent content. And that's gonna be it for now. We'll see you guys here in a couple weeks at Adrenaline Motorplex. Peace.